If you would please turn your Bibles to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes 4 will be our text this morning. Several months ago, I don't remember exactly where Rachel and Sam were, but for whatever reason, it was just Luke and I that day. And so I decided that I would take Luke to Chick-fil-A. He loves going to Chick-fil-A. He loves playing on the slides, and it's just a great place to go is Chick-fil-A. So I took him to Chick-fil-A, and Luke ran into the little playground area to go play on the slides. And there were two other little boys right about Luke's age playing on the slides as well. And as Luke went up to the two boys, he wanted to play with them. He was asking them, "Can I slide with you?" And Luke breathes a little bit differently. You can hear his breathing. He's had several surgeries to repair his airway. So he sounds a little different when he breathes, especially if he's running around. He breathes pretty hard. Well, one of the little boys looked at Luke and said, "He's a monster." And him and the other little boy ran away and wouldn't let Luke play with them. And Luke went after them and kept trying to play with these other kids, but they kept running away from Luke every time he got close. And for the time we were at Chick-fil-A, he wasn't allowed to play with those other two kids. They thought they could have more fun by excluding Luke. So they played what they wanted to play and they left Luke behind. Now, Luke wasn't upset about this at all. Okay, he played by himself. He had a good time. I guarantee you he doesn't even remember that it happened. Okay, even in just the course of that one day, it wasn't really that big a deal. Okay, we played on the playground for a few minutes. But part of why that story broke my heart is because I know that he is going to have to get used to people treating him poorly. We live in an unjust world. This wasn't the first time, it certainly won't be the last time that he's treated unfairly. In fact, he needs to get used to it because people are selfish. And I know that this doesn't just happen to my kid, right? On a bigger scale, this plays out throughout our world. People are selfish, they are envious, they are corrupt, and so what we do is we oppress each other. That's the way the world works. That's the way it's always been. Oppression runs the world, and as long as people are the ones running the world, that's the way it's always going to be. Notice Ecclesiastes chapter 4, starting in verse 1. Again, I looked and saw all the oppression that was taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. Birth rates are down in the United States for native-born Americans, and there's lots of reasons for that. But one reason that people will often cite for not having kids, for not wanting kids, is because who would want to bring kids into a world as messed up as ours? Have you watched the news lately? Okay, think of all the ways that people in our world oppress each other. Think of how we take corruption for granted. Think of all the evil that we just accept as, well, that's how life works. It's normal. Our world is fallen, and whenever people get any measure of power, what we do with that is we oppress other people. And if we don't have power, then what we do is we try to cheat and manipulate so that we can get some power. We are corrupt. You know, the word oppression actually comes from a Latin word meaning to press down. In other words, we press other people down as a way to try to lift ourselves up. I want to get higher in life. I want to get further. I want to achieve whatever goals that I have. So the way I'm going to do that is to press other people down. You want to advance in life? The way you do it is by pressing down on other people. There is no gain for you without a loss for someone else. The wealthy oppress the poor. The majority oppress the minority. Men oppress women. Anytime people gain power in this world, our temptation is to use that power to press down other people so that we can get just a little bit further ahead. Okay, this works the other way too. When people are pressed down, if you're one of the oppressed, you're on the receiving end of oppression, your response is to try to oppress your oppressors. Okay, if I don't feel that my boss is treating me fairly, then what do I want to do? Well, I want to take down my boss. Let's see if I can't get that job. When I was just a little bit older than Luke, I got bullied at school. I was a really small kid. And so one of the things that I decided to do is I bribed the biggest, ugliest kid I could find with dessert off of my lunch tray, and then I had him bully the kids that were bullying me. It worked. If I feel powerless, then my response is to try to gain more power from others so that I won't be oppressed anymore. If we get into a religious war or a race war or a class war, if we're on the oppressed side, we may say some pretty lofty things about how what we really want is equality, but it's not true because what we really want is to win. I gain and you lose. If you want to know how the world works, if you want to know how to get ahead, it's to oppress. The way for me to get ahead is to press down on those beneath me and to pull down those ahead of me. Ecclesiastes says the way the world works is based on oppression and power and corruption. Keep in mind, this is a text that was written 3,000 years ago. Does anyone want to argue that we've gotten better as people about this? We oppress less today than they did back then? Or is it pretty much the same as it's always been? Verse 2. And I declared that the dead who have already died are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen the evil done under the sun. Think about that for a second. Do you want to avoid living in a world that's full of corruption and oppression and power struggles? Do you want to be happy? Then better for you to have never been born than to have to see all the evil that makes the world run. If you want out of the conflict, if you want out of the oppression, then death is your better alternative to living. If you came to church today expecting an uplifting message of happiness and comfort and peace, I hate to tell you this was not your Sunday. I'm sorry. Ecclesiastes literally says you would be happier if you had never been born. You'd be better off dead. Verse 4. And I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy of another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. I think I've told you part of this story before. I don't know if I've told you the whole thing, but whenever I was in third grade, the church that I was a part of decided to have a big Bible bowl. Okay, we invited other churches from all over the area to come and take part in the Bible bowl. All the kids were going to take a test over the Gospel of John was our book. Okay, I don't know how many times I read through John studying for this big Bible bowl because I was determined to do well at it. I took the study sheets home and did all of those. I went through with my parents studying John, and on the big day of the Bible bowl, I was ready. Okay. We went into the fellowship hall. We had the old wooden accordion style room dividers. You remember those in old churches? Okay, sat at the old wooden tables with the wobbly legs that fell out. I took my number 2 pencil in hand and filled out the third grade Bible bowl quiz sheet. Okay, afterwards, they give out awards for who did best at the Bible bowl. And would you know that I won first place in the third grade Bible bowl? Okay. Thank you. I took no pleasure in that victory, however, because that particular day, I was the only third grade entry in our Bible bowl. They did not give out a second place trophy that day. I was the only one that participated. Now, one of the reasons that I'm not a fan of Bible bowls is because I learned at 8 years old that the only way I could feel good about winning is if somebody else lost. I wanted to win at the Bible better than other kids. I think I might have missed some of those lessons in the Gospel of John, right? Do you want to know why we do this, why we oppress each other, why we spend our lives struggling to gain more power so that we can do a better job of pressing down our neighbors? Do you want to know why the world runs on corruption and injustice? It's because we envy. Okay, the root of all oppression is envy. We want more than what we have, and even more than that, we want more than what we think the next person has. Okay, today we have more wealth and luxury than they ever could have imagined 3,000 years ago when this book was written, and yet all that money, all that comfort, all the technology, all the entertainment that we enjoy cannot fix the fact that we live in a world driven by envy. I was telling Rachel just the other day, and something I really want right now in my life is I want a car that has power windows and door locks. Can you imagine a car where you just push a button and it does those things for you? That'd be awesome. That's what I want. You know, when my grandfather was my age, he couldn't envision power windows and door locks. If my grandfather were alive today and could see my car, he would marvel at how efficient my car is, because it's so much nicer than what he had available to him when he was my age. Okay, so why do I want something more? It's because I know something nicer exists and I don't have it. We have more than we could ever use, and yet we're still not content, and we won't be content until we have a little bit more. So long as I can see more, I want more. We are envious, and so we want more, and so we oppress each other, and because we oppress each other, we live in a world that is terribly broken. Is everyone good and depressed yet? Have I gotten you there? If not, we can go back and talk more about how broken everything is. But I want to ask, what's the alternative? Okay, I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be driven by envy and oppression. I don't want to oppress my neighbor. I don't want to be treated unjustly by others. I want to be happy with what I have. Okay, I don't want to live in a world where everyone's objective is to press down and pull down other people as a means of trying to get ahead. Surely there has to be a better way to live. Okay, and surely the writer of Ecclesiastes, this man who's supposed to be a paragon of wisdom and understanding, certainly he can see a way out of all of the corruption, all of the oppression. Surely the way out is not for me to just die or never be born. Surely there's something better than that. What do we do with this corrupt world? How can we be different? The next few verses, he offers us a couple of alternatives I want us to consider. The first alternative he offers us is he says, well, maybe we should quit playing the game. Okay? Maybe, maybe we should pay our light bill too. I don't know. I'm not done yet. I'm going to keep going. Thank you. Maybe we should quit striving so hard to get ahead. Maybe if I refuse to engage in the power struggle, maybe instead, if I just take life easy and quit worrying about it, maybe I can get out of all this oppression he's talking about. Okay, if I can't win the oppression game, I just won't play. You know, when I was in middle school, I figured out that I was never going to be good enough to play baseball for the Atlanta Braves. I figured out I was never going to be good enough at baseball to play on the varsity team in high school. So in middle school, I decided to quit playing. Thought I could either really try hard, practice harder, put in lots of extra effort, or I could just give up baseball. I said, well, if I'm never going to be that good at it, I'll just quit. I can do other things. If I can't win the game, I'll quit playing. If I can't out-oppress the people around me, then I'll just quit struggling for power. Verse 5. Fools fold their hands and ruin themselves. Better one handful with tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. In Hebrew, verse 5 there is an idiom, and it refers to the lazy man who decides that he won't play the oppression game. Okay, he won't work hard like everyone else. He's not going to chase after all these things, chase after power. He refuses to oppress. And so folding your hands and ruining yourself means that one hand has to eat the other one because you don't have any food. Okay, you want to sit out the game? Then you won't eat. By not engaging in this power struggle, the man who wanted to avoid oppression ends up starving. But hey, at least he didn't have to work hard to do it, right? You can't sit this game out because the whole world is playing the oppression game. Okay, so what do? If we can't avoid playing the game, if the world is going to force us to live by its oppressive systems, then maybe what we need to do is just get really good at it. Okay, maybe I can find my contentment by oppressing other people better than they can oppress me. I mean, wouldn't you rather bully than be bullied? If I can get better at pushing people down and pulling people down than you are, then I can get ahead of you. I don't need to sit out the game. I need to learn how to win it. I need to gain more power so that I can be one of the oppressors rather than one of the oppressed. Verse 7. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Okay, let's say that you get really good at the oppression game. Let's say that you have power and you're very successful at pulling down all the people ahead of you. You climb that ladder as high as you can. You step on all the people beneath you to get yourself a little further. You work hard your whole life. You keep gaining more and more. Your envy keeps getting you that bigger car, that bigger house, that more prestigious title. You become a person of respect. By every worldly measure, you are winning. At the end of your life, as some preacher reads Psalm 23 over your cold body, as all your family and friends are just waiting for him to be quiet so they can go have the potluck meal, what do you have? What did all that work get you? What did that life of oppression achieve for you? Absolutely nothing. Okay, so what do? You can't buy into the oppression and evil of the world. You might get some more stuff. Your envy, though, will never be satisfied. You certainly can't take any of it with you. You also can't decide to just sit it out. If you decide, I don't want to be an oppressor, I'll just quit trying, then you'll be like the lazy fool who can't feed himself because all the other people aren't going to quit playing the game. They're going to keep oppressing, and they don't mind whether you're playing or not. They'll keep oppressing you. So if the choice is either to be an oppressor or oppressed, that's not much of a choice. So what's the conclusion? How are we to live? Notice verse 9. He says, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if 2 lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, 2 can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. I started this morning by telling you a story of how Luke was excluded from playing with some other kids on the playground, how they didn't want to let him play with them and he had to play by himself. Okay, but do you know what Luke asks me at least 4 or 5 times a week? Every single week. Yesterday, at least 4 times, he asked me the same question. He says, Dad, can we go to church? You know why Luke asks me that question all the time? Is because here is community. Here is acceptance. Here is a place where we don't buy into the idea that the world has to run on oppression. Here we reject the world's notion that the only way to get ahead is by tearing others down. Here we believe that relationships are more important than accomplishments. Ecclesiastes says you can get out of the rat race of oppression and injustice, but the only way you can do it is by removing yourself from the center of your worldview and taking on a worldview that believes it's not about you. If everything in your life is just about you, you'll either be an oppressor or oppressed, and that's the only option for you. If instead we can remove ourselves from that center throne of our lives and put something else there, put God there, put His kingdom right there, then we can get out of it. When it's not about me, then those are not my only two options. When it's not about me, suddenly there's a new option that emerges, and it's the option that instead of living for myself, I can choose to live for God and for you. And if I can get to that point where I'm living for God and for you, well, that opens up a whole new world. The alternative to living by oppression is to live for community. Lots of times in Scripture, God tells us that you will belong to a kingdom and you will serve that kingdom. The only question is, will you belong to the kingdom of God, or will you belong to the kingdom of this world and buy into the oppression and the corruption and the selfishness? I think the ultimate answer here is we need to learn how to live for community. We need to learn how to live lives that see Jesus as Lord and not me as Lord.